Welcome to the February 8th, 2021 City of Berkeley Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. I'm Paul Evans, the chair. I'm glad to have everybody here. At this time, I'd like everybody to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
for which it
stands,
one
nation,
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
with
with liberty and justice for all.
all.
Ms. Schluto, can we have the roll call, please?
Board Member Allen,
Here in Berkley, Michigan.
Board Member Gesund, Alternate Hatchett.
Here.
You could state city and state
Oh,
from where you're
sorry.
broadcasting.
Here from Berkley, Michigan.
Board Member Krug,
Here from Berkley, Michigan.
Board Member McAlpine,
Here from Berkeley, Michigan.
Alternate McDonald, Board Member Euler,
Here, Berkeley, Michigan.
Board Member Ward,
Here, Berkeley, Michigan.
Chair Evans.
Here, Berkeley, Michigan. Okay, we have a quorum. And we have an agenda before us tonight, and there is a carryover item from the last time we met regarding a matter that was tabled. So with consideration in that, does anyone have a motion on a modified agenda for tonight? Ms. McAlpin.
I would make a motion that we modify the agenda to add the excuse for Miss Ward from the November meeting.
Okay, and you'd like to add that as the first item of,
Sure.
okay. All righty, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Support.
Mr. Allen, support? Okay, any discussion?
Sir, Paul?
Yes,
Or Mr. Evans?
yes.
Point of personal privilege.
Mhm.
I would just like to thank my fellow board members for their kind thoughts and emails they sent me after I indicated the reason for my absence. And that was very nice to receive. And I thank them all very much for that.
Well, duly noted. I'm sure you're very welcome from everybody here. Thank you for being
Yeah.
part of this board. Okay, I think we're ready for a vote.
Hanchett,
Yes.
Krug,
Yes.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes. Okay, so Ms. McAlpin, if I'm correct, we'll put this on the first item of new business, correct?
Correct.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have before us the meeting of November 9th, 2020 draft minutes. We've all had a
Mr.
chance to
Chairman?
review those. Ms. Schluto.
Yes, we need to have a motion on whether or not to excuse Board Member Gesund this evening.
Ah, yes, thank you very much.
Make a motion to excuse board member Gund for this evening.
I have a motion. Support from Ward. Have a motion and support. Any discussion? Ms. Schluto, the vote, please.
Krug,
Yes.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Hanchett,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes. Okay, now we'll move on to the approval of our draft minutes from November 9th, 2020. We've all received a copy of those. Does anyone have any suggestions for changes or modifications? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
Make
Have
a
we done
motion.
the agenda? I apologize. Have we done the agenda?
You know, we haven't. Thank you. Yes, we do need to do the agenda. Thank you. So we have a proposed agenda, and we've made the board has made a motion to put item 1 for new business as a discussion for excusing Ms. Ward. So with that being said, do we have any other suggestions for modification to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to accept as amended.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? Ms. Schluto.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Hanchett,
Yes.
Krug,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes. Now, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from November 9th. And as stated, we've received a copy of these. I'll entertain any suggestions for modification or a motion to approve as submitted.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as given.
Motion by Mr. Allen. Do we have a second?
I'll support that. Go ahead, Joe.
I'll support.
Second by member Krug. Any discussion? Ms. Schluto.
Euler,
Yes.
Ward,
Abstain.
Allen,
Yes.
Hanchett,
Yes.
Krug,
Yes.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Evans.
Abstain. Okay, we'll move on to items for the agenda. Item 1 would be the tabled item from our last meeting regarding the matter to excuse Ms. Ward. Ms. McAlpine.
I'll make a motion that we excuse Ms. Ward from the November meeting per the email correspondence we received and given the circumstances of the situation.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Who was that, Mr. Allen?
Mr. Allen, yep.
Mr. Allen. Any discussion? Ms. Schluto.
Ward,
Abstain.
Allen,
Yes.
Hanchett,
Yes.
Krug,
Yes.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes. Okay, our next item is application for an interpretation and a variance request on Thomas Avenue. And at this time, Ms. Schluto, I believe Mr. Board Member Krug may have some comments to make.
Yes, I've known them personally for quite a long time, and they're also neighbors of my daughters. So I'd like to be excused from this.
Okay. Does any board member have any reason why Member Krug should not be allowed to step down? And I see we have alternate Hanchett here. So I believe our procedure is Mr. Krug, you'll leave the meeting.
Yes.
And then when we're done with this matter, you'll be called back. And in the interim, Mr. Hanchett will sit for this case until you're called back.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I can put
Yes.
Mr. Krug in the waiting room. Is that correct?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Joe, please stand by.
All right.
Mr. Ular, I saw your hand.
Sorry, I was handing my keys to my wife.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Hanchett is now sitting for Mr. Krug. And this is an appeal of an interpretation for property at Thomas. Ms. Schluto, could you give us a presentation in summary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to reference my review letter that was included in your packet for consideration this evening. Just a little bit of background. The Zoning Board of Appeals has given their interpretation that generators on a residential property should be considered as accessory structures. That is how the city has been operating for quite some time. We do not have an ordinance on the books as of yet for this regulation that has gone before the Planning Commission and the first reading at City Council. So while they're not going to be regulated specifically as accessory structures and they will be classified as exterior appliances, they will still be regulated to the rear yard. So in that sense, the applicant is requesting a variance to install a whole house generator in the side yard on his property. I have included here, the subject property is zoned R1D, single family residential. That is in line with the surrounding properties to the northeast, south, and west. And I have included here the standards of review that are noted in the ordinance. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Ms. Ward, I see you have a question.
Yes, I was wondering if we received any type of communication from the neighbor next door at 2160 Thomas.
I have not received any communications, emails, letters, or otherwise, no.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll make sure we address that in public hearing as well. So Ms. Schluto, if I understand this right, are we being asked to interpret? And if the interpretation is not successful in the applicant's eyes, then a variance, or do we go right to a variance?
Well, because we don't have anything on the books to really pinpoint that these exterior or this that a generator is considered an accessory structure, it is in line with best practice to consider this as an interpretation first, even though it has been interpreted by the Zoning Board of Appeals before.
Okay. Considering any other additional thoughts by the board, perhaps we split this up into two, deal with the interpretation first and then the matter second. And Ms. Schluto, if I'm not mistaken, we do have to hold a public hearing on both, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the way I envision this happening, and if members of the board have any questions or different thoughts, is I'll conduct a process, including a public hearing for the interpretation. And once we're done with that, depending on how that goes, then we would move on to our next item of the variance. Okay, not hearing any objection, we'll proceed in that manner. So with that being said, any additional questions for Ms. Schluto on the interpretation? Okay, and I see our applicant is here. Sir, could you identify yourself and tell
Hi,
us?
yeah, Kevin Carsima.
Thank you. Okay, and if you could address the first part of your request, the interpretation for the board, please.
Yeah, would just like to put a whole house generator on the side of our house near our air conditioning units. We plan to have a deck built in the springtime in the backyard, and it would kind of be in the way of the deck. And, you know, we have those, what you're calling appliances at the side there already. They are behind a privacy fence and would not be seen by the neighbors or from the street. And, you know, the thing would only run once a week at a chosen time. So it's not like it would be going all the time or anything. And if the power did go out, the whole neighborhood is humming with generators anyway. Yeah, we hired Oak Electric to do this. The process started last August, and you know, when they applied for the, you know, the permit to put it on the side, then, you know, obviously it was rejected, and they said we could file a variance, and so that's why I'm here.
Gotcha. Okay. And if you just let us know, I think we know this. You'd prefer that we interpret this to not allow it as an accessory structure, but the city has considered it that in the review of your application, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Do any members of the board have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Seeing none, I'll now open the public hearing portion. The public will have the opportunity to speak on this matter. To speak during this portion, participants in the webcast utilize the raise hand function by selecting Manage Participants on the bottom of your dashboard and select the More button in the bottom right-hand corner. Our moderator will call your name aloud and unmute you so that you can speak. For those who have called in, You can be placed in the queue for public comment by selecting *9. Our moderator will announce the last 4 digits of your phone number for recognition and unmute you so that you can speak. Participants will have 3 minutes to speak, as they would if we were meeting in person. Once your 3 minutes are up, you'll be muted by our moderators. Additionally, comments can be submitted prior to or at this time to zoning@berkleymish.net, where residents and community members can submit public comments as well. Your email must be able to be read in less than 3 minutes. Given the circumstances with the virtual space, we may not be able to read through all of the email comments, but know that we will have them stored and acknowledged on the public record. To participate in public comment, you can dial by phone at 1-312-626-6799 and enter the meeting ID 997-0652-8278. 42. Nope, just stop at the 8278. At this time, we'll review public comments. Aaron, you may begin with any emails received prior to the meeting.
I have not received any emails or correspondence from the public regarding this.
Okay. And do we have anyone who's looking to make a public comment, Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Chair, I see nobody indicating such thing.
Okay. All right, well, not having any public comment, I'll close the public comment period and bring it back to the board for deliberation and discussion. Mr. Allen.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As you covered earlier, we have brought this before the Zoning Board of Appeals on a number of occasions for an interpretation, and it always has been interpreted that it's an auxiliary structure and it belongs in the rear yard. The only time anything is varied from that is if someone had requested a variance. We went through a period of time where there were a number of those, if you guys all remember. But for the sake of consistency, I do believe that the building department made the right choice and gave the right advice.
Thank you. Ms. Ward.
I do have a question. I haven't been on the board as long as Mr. Allen, but is there any consideration given for the size of a backyard? From what I was able to see from the street, I did not want to trespass on the owner's property, but it looked like it was a very short backyard. Was there any type of consideration given to the size of a backyard? If it was a very spacious backyard, that absolutely these whole house generators belong in the backyard. This appears to be a short backyard or a small backyard.
Well, welcome if anyone on the board might have some input on that, if Mr. Allen isn't certain.
We've never taken into consideration the size of the backyard. It's just the location of the unit where it's best suited. And, you know, if you had an extremely deep backyard, it wouldn't do you a lot of good because there's a lot of plumbing and electrical that goes with it. But that's irregardless of what we're doing. But yeah, we've never taken into consideration the size of the yard. We have taken into consideration for variance requests the width of the side yard, but that's the only yard we've addressed.
Well, I know that the homeowner indicated that he is interested in putting in a patio in the back. And if the backyard was longer. I think both could happen, both the installation of the full house generator as well as a patio. But from what I was able to see, the patio will probably be extremely close to the garage. And understand now why the homeowner is requesting either an interpretation of or a variance.
Thank you. Do any other board members have any comments? Mr. Hanchett?
Yeah, I guess I would just say that I agree with the board's previous interpretations of this ordinance. I think that it would be considered an accessory structure. I guess the one question I had or concern I had was just that as the ordinance is written today, it says it's an accessory structure or an accessory building or structure. It doesn't say accessory building or accessory structure. And the definition under the code is for accessory building or accessory structure. I think it meets that definition, but looking at the definition of structure as well, even if we just looked at it as a structure, it says that anything constructed or erected, the use of which requires location on the ground or attachment to something having location on the ground. I think that these would still have require location on the ground and could still be considered a structure. But I could see where there might be different interpretations there. But so I'm just wondering whether we need to look at the definition of accessory building or accessory structure, or also the definition of structure as well.
Mr. Allen?
Yes, I'd just like to remind everyone that this was an important enough topic that it went for a little language cleanup on the ordinance itself. And as Ms. Schluto said, it's been, first reading's been approved by council. Second reading is coming up, but it was important enough to get more detailed as to what an accessory structure is. And it follows right in line with any opinion that we've ever given or anything we've ever granted variance-wise.
Yeah, I concur with what I'm hearing. I think Mr. Hanchett raises some good points with the ordinance that the revision that's supposed to go into effect soon attempts to address. I also agree that, and I'm leaning towards considering this an accessory structure as well, based on everything that I've heard so far. Is there any further discussion by board members? If not, perhaps I'll entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion to, in support of the fact that these are accessory structures and that our building department, community development director made the absolute correct decision that they are auxiliary structures.
Thank you. Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. Hanchett. Is there any further discussion?
Well, is it accessory structure or auxiliary structure?
Mr. Allen?
What's our current language? I don't have
Accessory.
accessory.
Accessory structure.
Okay.
Right.
That's what I'm reading in Ms. Schluto's report. It's calling it an accessory structure, not an auxiliary structure.
I'm sorry.
It's either called that or an exterior appliance,
Okay.
according to the Planning Commission's draft.
Accessory structure.
Okay, Mr. Hanchett is the seconder. You're okay with that clarification?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. McAlpine. So do we have any further discussion? I intend to vote yes on the motion for reasons stated earlier. With that being said, Ms. Schluto, can we have a roll call vote?
Allen,
Yes?
Hanchett,
Yes.
Krug. I'm sorry, McAlpine,
Yes.
Bueller,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes. Okay, so Mr. Karsama, the board has upheld the decision of the department to consider this an accessory structure. So consistent with approval of our modified agenda, we'll move on to the second half of your request, which would be a variance to place the generator in the side yard. Ms. Schluto, would you like to give us just a brief summary so everybody's clear on this second portion?
Yes, so as Mr. Kursama noted, that he is requesting to place the whole house generator in the side yard. It would be located next to the existing air conditioning unit that's in the side yard. He noted that he is anticipating and planning to place a deck in the rear yard from off of the rear of his home sometime this spring, which would be the only location that it could be could go. So by his planning, he would like to place it in the side yard. The only other option that we had seen for placing it in the rear yard is adjacent to the rear door from the family room, which is on a patio area, which you can see from the drawings and the renderings that accompanied his application. This may pose some pose an issue in I'm sorry, my computer's freezing. So adjacent to the house, there's a little patio area where a generator could go. However, that is right off of where the rear door wall is from the family room. And that could pose a little bit of an issue if there's ever in and out of that door wall for emergency purposes. So for that end, the applicant is requesting to place it in the side yard. It would be, as I noted, right next to the air conditioning unit and would be screened on these two sides by an existing privacy fence.
Thank you. Do any members of the board have any questions for Ms. Schluto? Ms. McAlpine?
I just have one question. So in the report, it states that it could go into that area that would be adjacent to the door wall. It also has indicated that it could be, if it was restricted to the rear yard, the unit would be required to be located to the other side of the deck, a considerable distance from the main house. So if we were to, if that was his option, I'm going to assume that that incurs more costs, and it would potentially burden the homeowner as far as if we did not allow the variance and he kept the deck, then there's that burden he has to pay for locating it to that area.
Yes.
And then can it work from that distance? I'm assuming it can.
We'd have to discuss that with the homeowner. These were just the options that I had seen based on the property. But given the proximity out in the middle of the yard, you know, if it was placed on the other side of the deck, that could pose problems with efficiency.
Okay, thank you.
And I have a question, Ms. Schluto.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at page 11 of our agenda packet. It's the aerial drawing. So the rear yard, if I'm looking at that correctly, if a generator were to be placed in the rear yard, it'd have to be placed, I guess it would be to the east of the easternmost portion of the house to be in the rear yard. Is that correct?
Along the side yard, yes.
No, I mean, basically what I'm asking is I just want to confirm my understanding. Where's the compliant location for this where a variance wouldn't be needed?
Anywhere from the rear part of the house. So yeah, the eastern part of the house to the rear. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Any additional questions for Ms. Schluto? Mr. Karsama? Okay, so if you could Again, tell the board the reasons for your variance request.
Yeah, we were hoping to get the generator installed on the side of the yard to leave more room for a deck that we will have built in the springtime. And yeah, just be a more convenient location, you know, closer to the house as opposed to having it move it, you know, way to the rear. And that's why I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McAlpine, I know at one time you had a question for the applicant. Would you like to pose that question to the applicant at this time?
I think I did. Let me just make sure. Well, I do have a couple questions. So why do you have the need for a generator? Do you have consistent power outages in your area?
Well, I think it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we lost it for a week at a time. I think it was in September and then the following March. And it's just a inconvenience. And, you know, my wife and I built our dream home here, and I'm going to be 60 years old this year. And it's just getting to that point where we do not plan on leaving the community and would like to kind of make our home our castle, so to speak. And we would know that, you know, we would be safe in a power outage situation.
Okay, and then did you also consider moving it to that I guess potentially that third location, which would, or the second location, which would allow it to be in the rear yard, but just would put it a significant distance from the home?
Well, if that's what we have to do, I guess that's what we're going to do. You know, I mean, we're, you know,
Okay.
hoping that this would work out, but if it doesn't, we have to move to a different option and you know, what you guys, the city will allow.
Okay. I'm good now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any other members have any questions for the applicant?
Oh, can I have one more?
Yes.
So given there's a rather large sign in your front lawn, that front yard, that indicates that this is coming up in front of us, did any neighbors or anyone in your surrounding area approach you regarding what you were doing?
No, I haven't heard a thing.
Okay, thank you.
And sir, I have one question. One of our standards is that the need for the variance is due to a unique circumstance or physical condition of the property. Can you describe what you believe is a unique circumstance or physical condition of the property that perhaps was not self-created by you or previous people who built the house?
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that question to me?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
please repeat it. I'm sorry about that.
I can repeat it, yes. So one of our standards is that the needs for a variance is due to the unique circumstance or physical conditions of the property. Can you describe to the board the unique physical condition, unique circumstances of the property itself?
Yeah, it's I guess to put it on the side yard would be the you know, the most convenient location, and you know, we have the air conditioning unit there already. To move it more to the back would kind of be in the, you know, more so in the middle of your yard as opposed to being next to the house. And you know, the yard isn't real big. I'm not sure if we could get the deck built around it. You know, I'm not sure. You know, what type of code is involved with that. I know that Aaron had stated before, it just needs to be behind the, you know, the property of the house. So you know, I don't know if we put it close and then, you know, did the deck around it, or that's why I'm here, to see what our options are.
Sure. Thank you. Ms. McAlpine.
So to follow up on Mr. Evans' questions, we have 5 criteria that we have to meet. This is, you know, there's no gray matter here. It's black or white. It's either yes or no. And one of those criteria is that if we deny your request, you will not be able to use, we will prevent the property owner from using the property in the permitted purpose. And while I understand what you're trying to do, and I appreciate the fact you want a deck, if we say no to you, you could still live in your house and sleep in your house just like you normally would. You can still use your backyard. I guess that's where I'm struggling, is how do we justify the fact that if we say no, then you can't use your property as you would intend to use it, because there is an alternative location to put it. And the other criteria we have to look at is this the minimum variance? Well, technically, you could get away with not putting in a variance, and I understand that that's, potentially somewhat burdensome.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was just, you would have a deck and then, I mean, maybe it'll fit back here okay. I mean, I'm not sure, again, it was just, seems to be more convenient to put it in the side yard.
Okay,
And, I mean, yes, the backyard will still be usable, obviously. You would just have this generator visible and,
Thank you. Mr. Allen.
I don't have a question for the applicant, just more a couple of general statements. Shall I hold on that?
Yeah, I still have to open the public comment as well.
Okay,
Then I'll bring it back for deliberation, any other discussion.
fair enough.
All right. Well, I guess final call. Any members have any additional questions for the applicant? Okay, well, at this time, I'll open up the public hearing portion of the meeting. To speak during the public comment, participants in the webcast can utilize the raise hand function by selecting Manage Participants on the bottom of your dashboard and then select the More button in the bottom right-hand corner. Our moderator will call your name aloud and unmute you so that you can speak. For those that have called in, you can be placed in the queue for public comment by selecting *9. Our moderator will announce the last 4 digits of your phone number for recognition and unmute you so that you can speak. Participants will have 3 minutes to speak as they would if we were meeting in person. Once your 3 minutes are up, you'll be muted by our moderators. Additionally, comments can be submitted prior to or at this time to zoning@berkleymich.net, where residents and community members can submit public comments as well. Your email must be able to be read in less than 3 minutes. Given the circumstances with the virtual space, we may not be able to read through all of the email comments, but know that we will have them stored and acknowledged on the public record. To participate in public comment, you can dial by phone at 1-312-626-6799 and enter meeting ID 997-0652-8278. At this time, we'll review public comments. Ms. Schluto, do you have any emails we received prior to the meeting?
I have not received any emails, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And Mr. Moderator, do we have anyone awaiting to address this board?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Mr. Jose Esguerra has his hand raised.
Very good. Okay. Thank you, sir. Yes. Mr.
Okay.
Ezekira, would you like to address the board?
I'm actually his wife. He's here with me. We're Jose and Sharon Esguerra. We live right across the street. And I just wanted to make a public comment that he's a wonderful community member. And we lived across the street from him for 18 years and we support him. And I think it's a good idea to allow him to be able to put it on the side of the house like he wants. And maybe I don't understand everything, but I just support him and hope that he's able to do that.
Great. Well, thank you for attending tonight.
Thank you.
And if I may also add,
Yes.
This is her husband, Jose.
Yes.
We do find it a near necessity to have a generator in this area, simply because we have above ground power lines that run through trees. And that's what we find often in the spring and the fall. You have ice storms, high winds that'll knock these trees or branches into these power lines. And it happens quite often. And having to depend on DTE, who takes care of all of Michigan, sometimes you have to wait until they can come and service.
Yeah, we end up going to hotels for a lot of the time. And so, and as he is approaching 60 and we're in our mid 50s, it would be nice. I'm thinking about doing it myself. So getting a generator. So just, we support them.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
And seeing there's no other members here on my screen, Mr. Moderator, do we have anyone in the queue?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Well, I believe that concludes public hearing. I'm going to close the public hearing and turn it back to the board for discussion. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Ms. McAlpine alluded to, we have 5 standards of review, and they're very narrow focused. Very narrow focused. It's black and white, and no interpretation or gray areas in there. One of the things that we cannot let cloud our judgment or potentially cloud our judgment is how much something's going to cost to do to remedy the situation. That has to come off the table. The other one is, it's our very first standard that we have to jump over, and that is that it's not a self-created need. And unfortunately, being able to put all that stuff in the backyard at the same time is a little problematic, of course. But if you want to move a generator to the side yard so that you could build a deck, that's a self-created need, and I could not vote in favor of it because it doesn't hit the mark.
Thank you. Ms. McAlpine.
I would have to agree. When we go through the standards for review, the answer is either yes or no. It doesn't make us the most favorite people in Berkeley. Our job is not always easy. It's often very difficult because a lot of the things that we look at do improve someone's quality of life or make things look nicer, but that was not the task that we were given. And I think the 2 things for me are, number 1 is the unique circumstances, and number 2 is the fact that the house will still be a house. It still functions in the way it's supposed to be, with or without the generator, unfortunately. And the fact that we would be granting a variance because it makes it more convenient or it makes it look better, it does not comply with what the directives we are given in the mandates in which we must make our decision, unfortunately.
Thank you. Would any other board members like to comment? Mr. Ular.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to grant the variance. I don't,
It's horrible.
I think the world would go on fine in this particular case. It'd be helpful to him. It might be helpful to the community even. But the problem I see is, I mean, there's the criteria, but the other thing is, if we grant this one, how do we not grant every other one? And then it just becomes anybody who wants a generator in Berkeley can stick it in the side yard. And some neighbors get along, some neighbors don't get along. There's a noise issue here. I think that's part of the reason why generators are treated this way. We can't just say anybody in Berkeley can build a generator in the side yard, which is what this would be. So I'm sympathetic. I'd like to grant it, and I've been without power. I understand all those things. But yeah, I'm not going to be able to vote for it.
Thank you. Mr. Hanchett.
I would completely agree with Mr. Euler. Unfortunately, I think that I can be sympathetic with why you'd want a generator and the preferred location, but I just don't see anything that's unique about this property that wouldn't allow us to differentiate between this property owner and everybody else within the city of Berkeley. So I don't think I could grant the paper either.
Thank you. I concur with what my fellow board members have said. I'd also like to add that the applicant has alluded to the fact that it would be possible to construct without a variance. So in that instance, I believe that several of the standards aren't met, and we are obligated to deny if at least one of the standards aren't met. So those are my thoughts. If board members don't have any additional thoughts, I'd entertain a motion. Ms. McAlpine.
You're on mute, Sue.
Thank you, sorry. I make a motion that we deny request PBA 01-212144 Thomas Avenue. The request to install the generator on the side yard, given the fact that it does not comply with the 5 standards in which we have to meet.
Thank you. Do we have a second on the motion?
Board?
Support by Mr. Allen. Any discussion on the motion by any of the board members? Seeing and hearing none, I believe we're ready for a vote. Ms. Schluto.
Hanchett,
Yes.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes. Sir, I'm sorry, but you have not received your variance. Your request has been denied, but I want to thank you for the time and effort you put in and appreciate you participating in this public process tonight.
All right, thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, our next item of business is elections. Matter of electing a chair and vice chair to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
This
Yes.
is- Yes, this is a quick and easy task. This is done at the beginning of every year per your rules of procedure. At the January meeting, if there are no items for discussion, it would be moved to the February agenda. So at this time, Paul Evans serves as chair and Stu McAlpine serves as vice chair. We have received word from one board member who had interest in either of those positions.
Okay, and thank you, Ms. Schluto. Before I go any further, let the record show that Mr. Krug has returned. And we can have Mr. Hanchen remain here because we have a full board of 7. So Mr. Hanchen, if you'd like to continue to participate, you may. Thank you. Thank you for participating. Okay. And who was the other member who expressed interest?
Board member Allen.
Board
Yes.
member Allen. Okay, great, great. Okay. Well, as the chair, I'd like to say that I've definitely appreciated my time in this position. I think we've got an excellent board. I think this is the best board, at least the strongest board that I've been on in terms of conducting our role. I would certainly welcome the opportunity to continue as chair, but at the same time, I would not be offended if someone else would like to step into the role.
Mr. Chair, if I will speak as well, please.
Yes.
So I'd like to say the same. I've been on this board for several years, and I have to truly appreciate the due diligence that we do as a group, the commitment to do the right thing. And it's not always an easy decision, but I believe that the engagement we have now is better than I've ever seen. So once again, I appreciate my time as vice chair, and I am open to remaining in that position if you so choose.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments or perhaps a nomination?
I would like to nominate Mr. Chair or Mr. Evans to remain as chair.
Support.
Accept. Okay, we have nomination and support, and I will accept that nomination. Do we have any additional discussion? I believe we're ready for a vote.
Krug,
Yes.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Hanchett,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, now the matter for vice chair. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for Sue.
Thank you. I would accept as well.
Or,
We have a motion and support. Is there any additional discussion?
I was just wondering if Mr. Allen wanted to say something.
No, but I appreciate it. I've enjoyed working on this board, and Mr. Evans and others who have spoken about it were absolutely correct. This board is starting to click. There's nobody that's afraid to speak up and nobody that's afraid to look like the bad guy. And I appreciate that. Following the rules is a good thing.
I guess I'd say, I think Steve would do a fine job too, but my view is if it's not broke, don't fix it. So
Absolutely.
that was my thought process.
I agree.
Any additional discussion? I believe we're ready for a vote. Ms. Schluto.
McAlpine,
Yes, sorry.
Bueller,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Hanchett,
Yes.
Krug.
Yes.
Evans, I'm sorry, Evans.
Yes. Well, thank you for everybody for offering your time. And I will say that, Mr. Allen, I agree with you 100%. This board works well, and I appreciate everybody's being candid and also being familiar with our job. It's not an easy job at times. Okay, our next item is rules of procedure. Knowing this may be, well, I'm not sure how long it's going to take. I propose that we maybe recess for 5 minutes. Everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, well, by my clock, it's 7:54, so we'll come back at 7:59.
Okay.
ready to go live? Ready?
I believe we're good. Let me, waiting on confirmation. One moment, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, you're ready to go.
Thank you. Okay, I'll reconvene the February 8th, 2021 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. And our next item of business is rules of procedure. Ms. Schluto, I guess for the whole board, I'm thinking maybe the order we ought to go in is have Ms. Schluto give her presentation, as well as she had several items that she requested in her memo for the board to consider. And then maybe would it be appropriate to go line by line for the changes that are in the marked up version of our rules of procedures. Everybody okay with that general process?
Mhm.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Great, thanks. Okay, well, Ms. Schluto, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yes, per your rules of procedure, the rules of procedure are due for their annual review either at the January or February meeting. Given that we did not have a January meeting this year, we're having that annual review this time. Over the course of the last year, a lot has changed in that I feel would be good to be incorporated into our rules of procedure, specifically for attendance, new member orientation and training, as well as a continued education requirement. This was passed by City Council in the Ordinance 05-20. I have passed that out to you, as well as the plan for all of those items to be achieved and maintained and reported throughout the course of the year. So that's one major part of it. But as I was going through and making those updates, I thought it would be good to address some other issues, and would like the board to consider a number of the following. So I'll go through each of these one at a time. The attendance policy for regular and alternate board members. The way that the ordinance is written is for regular board members, but it would be good to discuss if the alternates are required to attend and need to be excused or unexcused per the ordinance there. Typically, if we have a full board, or we know that we're going to be a full board, alternates are not required to attend. However, they are encouraged, therefore, so they can stay on top of the items that are going to be addressed in case an item is tabled from one meeting to the next. That way they can be brought up to speed very easily. But it's certainly not something that they need to be for each and every meeting. Item number 2, the standards of review. In the past, a board member has brought up or suggested a revision of the hearings procedure as outlined in section 3. This would allow for one board member either named and identified as one person, or at least have one person somewhere on the roster that will go through each of these 5 standards of review. We kind of already do that already, but this would just spell it out a little bit cleaner in the rules of procedure, as this has to be done as part of the items for that agenda item. Another item that was discussed in a previous review from last year was the time limit for public comment. At this time, there's not a specified time limit. The chair can set this time limit at their determination. So typically for a city council or planning commission, it's 3 minutes. We can include that, or we can leave it kind of up to you. I know you've been, Chair Evans, I know you've been consistent in stipulating the time frame for each individual of the public comment, but this would just include it in the rules of procedure. So when we have new members that come in, they know ahead of time what the procedure is supposed to be. And finally, the order of business. The public meeting order of business includes a public comment. this order is a little bit different for the ZBA, and I'm not quite sure why. So I would be curious as to if the zoning board of appeals members have any information to enlighten me on that. But for planning commission and city council, their public comment comes at the very beginning of the meeting, and this is for items that are not on the agenda. Whereas the zoning board of appeals has theirs at the end of the meeting. So ostensibly, you could have someone who just wanted to voice their opinion about something, and they have to wait through an entire meeting, like a meeting for tonight. They would have to sit through the rules of procedure, the elections, to make what could be a very simple comment. So we might want to consider moving that to the beginning of the meeting, just to be cognizant of that, but also to be in line with the policies of the planning commission and city council.
Thank you. Okay. Well, so how about if we go through all these four first, and then we'll proceed to the marked up one, and kind of, I don't know, based on doing this before, I know that it's not uncommon for us to have a direction when we're done with all this discussion, then have staff come back with a cleaner version for us to vote on. So that's probably what's going to happen tonight. So I'll start off with number one for the attendance policy. Do any board members have any thoughts on that?
I was just thinking that it might be cleaner to directly address the policy put in place by the council, so that if they ever modified that, we'd automatically be modified as well.
So when you say policy in regards to number one, I'm not sure what you mean.
We can directly spell out the ordinance that was passed by council as far as attendance goes and the procedures for that. And then if they ever modified their version of it, because really they hold the kind of the master key for that, then ours would automatically be updated as well. There wouldn't be any interpretation that would have to be done.
Gotcha. Does anybody else have any thoughts on proposal number one? Ms. Ward.
In looking at the attendance policy, I concur that both regular and alternate members should attend all of the meetings. I know when I was an alternate, I came to the meetings, and there was one particular time, I think it was the Green Lantern, where it was tabled, and the next meeting, one of the regular board members was absent, and I was asked to stand in. And had I not been at the first meeting, I would have been totally lost for my seat at the dais to discuss the matter. So I think it's important for both alternates and regular members to attend all meetings. Just a personal opinion.
I'd agree with that 100%. It is very important. You're not looking for warm bodies to fill seats. You're looking for people who are engaged, who will make the right decision.
I have to totally agree on that.
I agree. I think our theme tonight has been consistency, and I think having consistent people sitting at the meeting all the time for every meeting makes it so much easier should something carry over.
I'll play devil's advocate just for a second. I also started as an alternate, but I remember, going back some years, they didn't have people. I mean, the way I became an alternate is I just kind of went to City Hall and inquired, and they had nobody. And we're pretty good right now, but we might not always be that way. And if we do get back to where we were before, I'm not sure it's really realistic to require alternates to come every time. To be frank, and if you have empty spots and then somebody inquires and they tell you that you have to go every time as an alternate and phone ahead if you're not going to, I think it's unnecessary.
Fair point. So maybe since we are in the condition we are and we review this annually, maybe we move forward with the recommendation that everyone attend and have the ability to change it as necessary. I'm trying to find a happy medium.
Perhaps we say we encourage alternates to attend, and if they're not able to attend, to perhaps watch it on channel WBRK TV, so that at least they know what happens at the Board of Appeals meeting.
I could go either way. I think there's definite reasons whether they're required or not. And I remember when I was an alternate, and just understanding how the board works and how things work was very beneficial to me, even though I think my first 5 or 6 meetings, I didn't even cast a vote. I was in the audience the whole time. Mm-hmm. So I can see why there's definite benefit to it, but I certainly understand where Mr. Ular is coming from, and the possibility that, well, if I'm not, I'm going to go to a meeting but not participate. I guess if I had to vote yes or no on whether or not, I'd say it's definitely important for alternates to show up.
I agree. I mean, I went 4 or 5 times as well before I ever got to sit, I think, or maybe more, maybe not. And I'm not, don't let me argue out of it if it's strong. I mean, right now it might be best to say we want people to be there, but if we drop down to not having alternates or people drop, I'm not sure it's something we want to have in place. So I don't know if there's a way we could build some flexibility into it, but.
Yeah, I mean, we look at these every year. I guess just the thing that I see most evident is that, if we run into a lean year and we're having difficulty getting people to show, maybe we take another look at that. Or conversely, I know Mr. Hench, you're an alternate now, and the other alternate's not here tonight. Perhaps they're watching, but maybe if we do revisit this, now or in a year, that we get some input from the alternates, either throughout the course of the year, at least before we decide on it again, to see what they think.
You really want people that are engaged. I know I came to every meeting. I think it was almost 2 years that I was an alternate before a regular spot opened up. I don't believe I missed a meeting, and it's really invaluable to sit there and see how the board reacts with each other and kind of get a view of the playing field before you have to actually play the game. That's pretty important.
Yeah, I would fully agree. Same thing. I sat through the meetings just as an alternate, just not getting called up, but was able to understand how everything did work. And again, keep up to speed with what was going on with the different ones that came up to the board.
Ms. Ward.
Perhaps we may want to alter the language here and say that regular members have the duty to attend all meetings. Alternates are encouraged to attend all meetings. And then that would eliminate mandatory that you must attend meetings, but that they are encouraged to attend all meetings.
Strongly encouraged.
Could be.
And recommended.
Yep, I like that.
Yeah, recommended. That sounds.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
We're gonna go that route.
I knew we could come up with the right language.
I'm sensing some consensus. Is everyone in general, or maybe signify if you think differently? It sounds like the direction we might be going in is some more specific language that would be given to us that says that they're strongly recommended to attend all meetings.
Yeah.
Is that
I think-
something we want to ask Aaron to perhaps put in our next draft?
I think our devil's advocate needs to be comfortable with the language.
I'd be fine with that. I mean, yeah, if you require the alternate to attend and he doesn't attend, then you're just gonna have no alternate, right? I mean, so.
Either that or just going to call in all the time until they don't meet the attendance policy.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think something along that line's recommended or strongly recommended to attend all meetings.
You know, the other thing too, going along with what Miles was saying is, if you have two alternates and one of them never comes and one of them comes most of the time, who are you going to recommend to be selected to be on the ZBA? I think it sort of levels itself out.
Yeah, that's a good point. If somebody volunteers for this position and they are dedicated, they may have no issue at all with attending the meetings and start thinking the same. You know, I'm hearing a recurring theme here. It's just beneficial, beneficial, beneficial. Maybe they'll view it as part of their opportunity to get involved as far as they can be involved without actually sitting, but knowing that they can be called up even the day of a meeting.
Well, I also think it gives, the more frequently they are sitting with us and serving as an alternate, gives them more context. We all have gone through the generator issue several times, I feel like, or you've sat as an alternate. But most of us have had that experience talking about those. So we were able to draw from what we've done in the past and how we've addressed it, and which I think is important as well. And it also allows us to, and I'm not sure who exactly did it. It might have been, you know, we've all talked about the fact that, hey, this keeps coming up all the time. We might need to make some changes or make some recommendation or ask the planning commission to look at this, or, you know, Aaron, how many times has this come up? Collective minds, I think, are better than if we have more of them, is even including alternates.
Yep.
All right, so I guess right here, the majority, or most of us, saying is that we'd like to see some specific language for the strong recommendation and encouragement that alternates attend each meeting. Is that, I guess, can everybody nod or wave to kind of give a okay with everything? Okay, great. All right, and Aaron, you've got enough to work with on that subject to provide us some draft language? All right. Thanks. All righty. We'll move on to number 2. Standards of review are read aloud and discussed. Who does the board member who suggested that? Would you like to perhaps talk a little bit more about what you're thinking?
Sure, that was me. And the 5 standards are so important to create the best legally defensible position for the community. And sometimes we have made motions without even referencing them. And I think they need to be brought to the forefront, and as opposed to being an aside. You know, those need to be addressed one by one.
Could I, and I don't, maybe this isn't where we should reference this, but, and maybe as part of this change or this revision, if it does proceed, is that we also have a portion of the hearing where these 5 standards are read out loud prior to any kind of discussion, so that everyone can understand. what the criteria are before we even get started.
I think that's a fantastic idea. It puts them right up front, and then nobody's wondering what we're doing, how we're arriving at our decision. They know what we're using to arrive at our decision.
Chairman,
Any other thoughts?
would that be something you would like as part of the staff report to bring those standards up, or how would you like that? Would you like that a separate line item numbered in? Because during the
personally,
they're part of the review letter that I give, but I don't want to read the piece of paper verbatim, because that can be monotonous for people at home. But I can certainly read those aloud if that would be helpful to the board.
My thought is at some point we just say, you know, the 5 standards in which our decision is based upon is the need, blah, 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 blah. We just simply state what those are. And maybe that's done as part of your report, but not incorporating your comments, but just simply having, you know, as we move forward, these are the things that you need to consider, or these are the questions you need to clarify, or well, however we want to state that, but maybe it's something there. And just, you know, as a reminder, you know, board members, you need to keep these are the 5 criteria.
Perhaps before the cases are heard,
Yes.
it could cover whether you have 1 or 21 cases on your docket that night. They would just be addressed aloud before you move into the cases.
I would think, given the fact that we're operating in this environment right now, that we say it before each case.
Okay.
Because sometimes people come in and leave. So if someone was not in the waiting room, let's say, and we had 3 items, they might not jump in. I'm not sure how that the moderator lets everyone in, but you know, I just think it's important that we do it before each one. And I think if we're going to go through those 5 criteria for each specific case, we should say the same thing for each specific case before we review it.
That works for me.
Same here.
My question is, would that fall under section 3, parent 2, parents, sub-parent 6 under hearings? Is that where we would want to put it? That's on page 4.
Oh, I see. Your question is, would it be included like in the order of business?
Right.
Or the order of operations? Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it could. I guess when I say sure, I understand your question.
Oh, okay.
But I might ask,
Yeah.
Mr. Allen or Ms. McAlpin or any other board member.
Well, I was thinking of the reading of it once to get away from making a visit to the Department of Redundancy Department. You know, because you read for both of those hearings tonight, you read all of that about how to get into this meeting. And I know it's a little redundant. It's particularly redundant for the person that's making the presentation. That's why I suggested that. I don't have a problem either way, doing it before each case or once at the beginning before all cases. I don't have a problem either way.
I truly don't either. I just don't know what's the best way if to protect us throughout. And maybe someone would say, well, I wasn't in there. I don't know. And I think just the 5 criteria they're pretty short.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we have to say all this call in and your last 4 numbers in the 3 minutes and blah, 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 blah.
Code, the meeting code.
Yeah.
Yes.
Changing for every meeting. One thing we do for the Zoning Board of Appeals that I staff in Troy is that we have a procedure. And it's just a very brief order of operations, kind of like a summary for item 6 on page 4 that we have now. And we'll go through just the order of business. And we actually include that with our rules of procedure, or excuse me, with our rules of procedure. It's incorporated right into it. But also the chair asks the vice chair to physically read it, and it's always included as a page in our agenda. So A, it's always read during every meeting before the cases start, and B, it's there for all members to go back to. Page 2 or 3 is always the same thing in there. So these are just some things that we do in Troy, and perhaps I don't know, maybe one way to address this is before we start the hearings. Maybe the board, or maybe I could defer to at least how we do it in Troy is that they defer to the vice chair, so the chair doesn't have to read everything. And it's read one time. So maybe we could consider that as a starting point and see where that gets us. Just my 2 cents worth.
That sounds good.
Does anyone else have any comments either way?
I can live with that, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So what I'm hearing is that maybe we include it as a line item under 6 for the order of business for our hearings.
Mm-hmm.
And at least for starters, we do it once before new business. And would it be acceptable if I defer to the vice chair to read these?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Just want to hear from the vice chair too.
Oh, I'm fine, totally fine. Sorry, I was sipping water.
And Miles, were you giving a thumbs up? All right.
Our
Great.
devil's advocate, we've got to ask him to make sure he's on board.
Sure. All right. All right. So with that being said, everybody sounds like everybody's okay. If you're not okay, let us know. But if you're okay, good. All right. So Aaron, you've got enough to go off on that one. All righty. What's the next one here? Time limit for public comment. Well, I'm going to start out on that. I think as a chair, the chair should have the support of the board as to when and how much time, and maybe it needs to be even enumerated in our rules of procedure. I would just, whoever's chair, it doesn't matter, but to have the chair, rule that there's a time limit here, a time limit there, when at every meeting they might not rule that because there's no need for it, and then find out that an applicant is aggrieved and as part of their grievance with the city, whether it's a lawsuit or whatever, that just comes into question that perhaps the chair treated me differently because there are a lot of people here or whatever. So perhaps a time limit be incorporated into our rules, but then if the board wants to modify it, they have the ability to as an entire board. That's just my thought.
I think that's a really good idea. That everything is done fairly, but there's some guidelines there to begin with.
And if necessary for a particular public hearing, that the time would be lengthened. So if there was someone that wanted to, for whatever reason, exceed the 3 minutes, that the chair could grant them that option.
Any other thoughts?
I think we should have it in the rules of procedure, give it, if we go with the 3 minutes as the start point, just so, like we said, if someone comes back and says, oh, you didn't give me as much time as this other case, we have something in writing to go by.
Yeah. With maybe with some verbiage in there that says, comments will be limited to 3 minutes, modifiable by a vote of the zoning board of appeals.
Yeah, I mean, there can be times where it makes really good sense to allow someone to speak longer.
Yes.
Maybe an applicant, especially where there's a complex matter and they have a lot to present. The last thing we'd want to do is, well, at least we want to have the ability as a board to recognize that and vote as a board to do that rather than have the chair just do it.
Yeah. I'd agree with that.
I guess 3 minutes sounds pretty consistent with everything I've been reading out loud.
Yep.
All righty. All right. So, Aaron, does it sound like you've got enough to work with that to incorporate some draft language? Great.
Yes.
And I guess I should ask, is everybody's okay with that? At least proceeding in that direction for some draft language?
Yep, thumbs up.
Great. All right. Then order of business, number 4, public comment conclusion not in line. Okay, yeah. By the way, Aaron, nice summary on here. These are good things to think about. And I want to thank you for, you know, we don't always even meet every month, yet you keep these organized and bring them all back, even when we postpone action on this whole item until the next month. Yeah. So does the ZBA want to relocate public comments section to the beginning of the meeting?
Sure, for the sake of consistency. So if a person goes to the meetings, they'll kind of recognize the order.
I would say no. If we're going to be frank, most of the time there's not a lot of public comment unless there's a hot button issue going on. And I remember the times where there were quite a few people and quite a few public comments. I think if you put it at the front and you have one of those scenarios, you're going to have a situation where everybody just leaves. And I think there's some value to the public knowing that, at least for our purposes, these are all volunteers putting in their time. And I don't like the idea of the public's only engagement with the ZBA, if they're going to have some, is to show up, make a comment, sometimes a very spirited comment, and then walk out. I think there's some value in making them observe the process and see what we're doing, and realize they're people and volunteers. And I'm thinking back to a few years ago, you know, when we had people coming, and there's a lot of very spirited things being said. I don't think that would be a good way to start a meeting.
Yeah, that's true. Didn't think about that.
Ms. McAlpine?
I agree. At first I didn't agree, but after I heard Miles speak about it, it makes sense. I think it's also very important for them to understand that each case is deliberated individually, that there's no consistency, and that those 5 standards apply to each case, and the answers are never the same across the board, based upon what the petitioner is requesting. And I think we've talked about it as well. It's working well. I don't, you know, yes, there's always room for improvement, but I think that given the fact that it works well, I think we should be consistent and keep it the way it is.
Ms. Ward?
My understanding is that the public comment is for anything not on the agenda for that evening. So if we're waiting until the end of the meeting for someone to speak, it cannot pertain to anything that has been on the agenda. So if somebody has something they want to get off their chest, like say, for instance, they're unhappy with the traffic signal at 12 Mile and Coolidge. Let them say their piece and then they can leave.
Okay. Very good, thank you. Yeah, I tend to concur with Mr. Eular's statement. You know, this board has a very narrow focus on what we do, very narrow. And we've got applicants that are waiting for us to conduct our business. They've gotten in line, they've paid a fee, they've spent some time and money. They might even be delaying a project until they hear from us. And I think it's important that they be heard timely and promptly. You know, as Ms. Ward said, if people are going to come to the public comment, if they do end up commenting about one of our cases, we can't use it anyways. So perhaps if in the instance, I'm thinking if we move it up, if somebody were to come in, make some comments about our cases and, you know, and then just leave, I say, well, you didn't even listen to what I said. Well, you didn't wait around long enough, but now you're mad at us because, you know, we didn't incorporate what you said in our hearing. So that could have a unintended consequence as well. I guess I'm also concerned that if there's a item that doesn't involve our cases or anything to do with the Zoning Board of Appeals, I've seen this in other communities. I mean, I could send 100 people out there because I'm not happy with city council and how they address medical marijuana. Well, I got to sit through, look, everybody has their piece, but is it appropriate to sit through many, many comments that have actually nothing to do with the zoning board before we get started on our cases? So those are my thoughts. So based on everything I've heard, I'm inclined to leave it like it is.
I think I would agree. Just from what you were saying, Paul.
I would agree as well. I think Mr. Eular makes a good point.
All right, well, it sounds like the vast majority agree not to proceed with changing that part. Is that correct, everybody?
Yes.
Okay. All righty. All righty. So how about if we move to page 20 of our agenda? Should we just go through these, the proposed changes line by line?
Sure.
Okay, good. All righty. Okay, section 1. Authority. Following rules should be in effect unless written. Redundant, see section 7. Got it. Okay. Aaron, I know you've looked at this clearly in great detail. Do you have any suggestions as to how we should address that? Remove 7 and keep that one in there, or just remove one of them? What are you thinking?
I was just thinking, remove the first one because it's already part of the part of section 7. I mean, we can certainly keep both of them. It's just, you know, it's already spelled out somewhere else. The amendment to section 1 was done at the 2020 annual review to incorporate the attendance, continuing education, training requirements as noted in the ordinance 05-20 without having to do this entire rewrite that we're doing now. So it was kind of a stopgap measure before we could do a full rewrite.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. All right. So does anybody have any issue with, what did you say, Aaron? Keep section 1 the way it is and get rid of the part in section 7?
Yeah, either one.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
All righty. Aaron, I guess it's okay. You can pick whatever one and include that with the next draft. All right. Okay, so you're saying item 1A there and 1B, those proposed changes are consistent now with the new ordinance, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Does anybody have any thoughts on the proposed changes for item 1A, B, and I guess that's C, it's all those, right? Item 1A, new B, new C, right?
Yeah, so 1A is about the training. So new members appointed to serve on the ZBA must complete a training program. And then the continued education, 1B is completely new. The changes to 1C is just to make things a little bit cleaner and in line with the new member packet that goes to the orientation guidebook that's stored on the Google Drive. So that's just making that a little bit cleaner, and certainly we give them the copy of the Zoning Board of Appeals, but I took out the sections of the ordinance just because there's a lot of materials in that orientation guidebook already, and all of the ordinance materials are available on Unicode, and it's just a way to save some trees. Because if I were to provide the entire zoning ordinance to a new member, it's a couple hundred pages thick.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and quite honestly, while I'm sure I might have touched every page at one time or another, typically our requests are for a very small section of the ordinance. So,
and I would also wager that most people reference anything going online.
yes,
I know I do. I have a copy. I have a hard copy in my office, and I rarely use it.
I just did it tonight in preparation for this meeting. Went to MuniCode. All righty. Was everybody okay with those proposed modifications?
That sounds really good.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Ular? Just saying you're okay?
We're discussing all of the changes in 1A, B, and C now?
Yeah, and we can slow down if you want. That's okay.
I think the 5 to 6 hours of continued education each fiscal year is a bit extreme.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I don't know that we spent 6 hours in meetings last year. I mean, it might be about 6. With the canceled meetings, it might be 8. I think that's too much. I don't know what is the typical term for somebody? Is it, do we get appointed for 2 years or 3 years? Can't remember.
3 years.
2 years?
3 years.
3 years? I would think that amount would be that everybody has to do that amount over the course of their 3-year term. It would make more sense to me.
The continued education credit or requirement was stipulated in that ordinance. The hour number was discussed between myself and the city manager. So that's something that doesn't require an ordinance amendment. That's something that can be modified per our discretion.
So
we came up with the 5 to 6 hours because that would be 2 to 3 outside sessions of training or seminars or webinars or things of that nature. We had it up a little bit higher, to be honest, when we first were discussing. Just
each year.
I'm sorry.
So that's each year. 6.
Yeah,
That's like 2 courses each year.
Yes.
I mean, that's more than I'm required to do each year as a lawyer. But I think that's very high.
Anybody else have any thoughts on this? I guess my thought would be is over the years, the role of zoning boards of appeals have remained very consistent. And only if there's changes to state law or perhaps some case law, zoning boards of appeals for the most part are required by state law to operate and consider the same things all the time. So with that being said, there's going to get to a point where while different types of training and different types of learning are beneficial, we still are always going to have our core function and our core training. Aaron or Mr. Baumgarten, would it be possible that the city could consider providing us some training? I know right now Aaron does an excellent job of providing us just about any kind of training that comes across her desk. But I also think that would it be possible, you don't have to answer now necessarily, but I think yearly this board should have some kind of training or presentation, even if it's the same one that we see every year with modifications, to keep everybody consistent with doing our core job.
Mr. Chairman, I know those courses that we attended in Oakland County were really excellent courses.
Yes.
And if we could replicate those in-house or sign back up for one of those courses, that's fine. I've taken a number of them through Michigan Association of Planners, all virtual stuff, and they've been really, really good. But I have the luxury of working from home and setting my own schedule. So a lot of people don't have that going for them.
Any other thoughts on that matter from any of the board members?
I lay somewhere in the middle, only given that people's time is valuable, and if we're already volunteering, I want to make sure what I'm going to learn is something new. And if things don't really change that often, then we either have to create new or find new, and I don't know that there's always new content out there that is poignantly relevant for us every single year. And maybe I just haven't looked deep enough or seen enough of it. I'm not, I don't proclaim to be the expert on it, but if we have more training than meetings, I don't know that we really get to put all that training to use if we're not meeting as often as we're learning. And if we're not learning anything really relatively new that's different than what we know we need to do, our task at hand, then are we then spending city money that's unnecessary?
Does anybody have a problem with all new members having to go through a training course?
No, I know the ones I went through, I enjoyed, and I kind of can see where requiring a certain amount of training each year, you're going to get to a point where you have basically listened to all of it, or you've done the classes, and I don't know if you'd gain that much more out of it.
Well, they'd have to have new case studies. I mean, that's the only thing that really they could change, right?
Right.
I mean, if we went back to Oakland County, they'd have to have new examples to show us. And I don't know that we can rely on them to come up with new examples every year.
I mean, I did the 2 or 3 hour session in Pontiac the one night a couple years ago. I know some of us were there, and I also did a 3.5 hours on a Saturday at the Huntington Woods Library, I think. And by the end of that, it was just completely and oppressively repetitive. I don't know how you could study 6 hours on the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act every year. And I've said my bit.
Well, I'm not sure I'm hearing a consensus, except that I think everybody agrees that some form of education, continuing credits is good, and that sounds like most of us, or at least everyone who's spoken, is in a concurrence that new members should go through some sort of training. Is that, did I summarize it accurately? And anyone jump in if I haven't.
No, I think you've summarized it very accurately.
Okay. Mr. Allen, oh, new appointees, okay. So how did, if we were to give, and I guess anyone can jump in, but if we were to give Aaron some direction in regards to what we'd like to see it state for new appointees, what might that say, or at least what would be the concept?
Within 6 months of their appointment, take a basic training class.
I'm not sure that within 6 months, because there may not be a training class available. Perhaps within the first year, they need to take a training class. And that would give us, or give someone the opportunity that if they joined, say, in March, that they would have then all of that year, and then they'd be able to have January, February, and the following March, in case the program is given at the first of the year. So I would say within the first year as opposed to within the first 6 months.
It's not too difficult to get the training because I'm trying to remember when that took place, but Carlisle Wortman came in and gave a training session to Planning Commission, ZBA, I think even council. Invited to
Yeah.
attend that.
Yeah,
Right.
we had about 20, 25 people there.
Yeah, and it was a really good session.
That was good. Yeah, so sound, just based on my experience, the county sessions that Miles and Steve were talking about, plus the one that the city provided with Carlisle Wortman, I'm hoping if we can continue those availabilities, that's going to give all members the opportunity, I think, to get some very high quality, pertinent training, in addition to Aaron doing her excellent job of sending us information on other types of training, electric vehicles and charging and so forth.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The 6 month time period was stipulated in the ordinance that was adopted by council. So the 6 month time frame is not negotiable in this front.
Gotcha.
The Citizen Planner online course through Michigan State University Land Extension, that is an online course and can be done at their leisure
Okay.
throughout that 6 month period. So it's that's what we've more or less identified to give them a well-rounded foundation for the zoning and planning principles. So that can be done within the first 6 months, and that
Gotcha.
is discussed with the new appointees prior to their appointment to make sure they can get that done.
Okay. Good. All right. Well, good comments here.
So what is the status of the 5 to 6 hour? Was that part of the same resolution, or is that still kind of negotiable or up for, I guess I'm not 100% unclear on what the status quo is.
The ordinance stipulates that there is continuing education for planning, zoning, planning commission and zoning board of appeals. This was discussed by the city manager and myself, and we came up with a 5 to 6 hours. Given the amount of opportunities that I come across my desk, part of the continuing education plan that I had sent out to all zoning board of appeals members as well as planning commission stipulated that you can use, say you have a training opportunity that you have to do through your professional career. If that has zoning or planning implications, then that could be credited towards this. We will provide training opportunities through the planning commission meetings, zoning board of appeals meetings, or special meetings in order to help each member meet that requirement. So there were things that we thought of in order to continue these conversations to make sure that we're up to date on all the case law and any new information that comes about. But it's not part of the ordinance. No, not that 5 to 6 hours.
You know, based on this discussion, we could probably have a good half hour, 45 minutes, just this board brainstorming on what kind of things we might want to just be trained on. All right, so I'm not hearing a consensus on the 5 to 6 hours. But because but we do have to make changes in regards to the what the city ordinance requires. So Aaron, I know it's we're on our second hour of the meeting here. We've been talking about this for about an hour. Have we given you enough to work with on this, or do you need some more directives from the, or concrete items from the board?
You've given me some to work with, yes.
Okay, all right.
If we want to take are you wanting to take a pause and deliberate the rest until next month?
Well, let's see what we got going here. I guess I'll pose that question to the board. If the board would like to continue to move on further with this matter, we can. We can always postpone this for our next meeting.
I would suggest that, and as part of that, Mr. Chairman, perhaps we can have Aaron and Matt talk to one another and revisit the amount of hours and come back with another proposal, knowing that our training doesn't change that much from year to year.
Mm-hmm. I'm seeing a few nods.
Yeah, I would agree with Steve.
All right.
Oh,
Okay. Well, I think the appropriate thing here would be then, and I know Mr. Allen, you almost made a motion, would be to just go ahead and make a motion so it's clear for the record that we've agreed to stop where we're stopping, to continue on at the, did you want to continue at the next meeting, like in March?
Yeah.
Even if we don't have any other items of business, would it be appropriate to devote?
Absolutely.
an hour or
Yes.
two, yeah.
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion that we pause at this point with the rules and procedures and request that Aaron and Matt revisit the amount of hours being requested for additional training, and we'll work through the rest of the rules and procedures at our next meeting, whether there's regular business scheduled or not.
Okay.
Agreed. I support that motion.
We have a motion and support. Is there any further discussion?
No.
All right, I think we're ready for a vote.
Bueller,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Hanchett,
Yes.
Krug,
Yes.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes. Aaron and also Matt, thanks again for your time on this and hammering through this in the office so we can have a better product when we're done. I appreciate it. Other business. Is there any other business, Ms. Schluto? Or members of the board?
No.
No, okay.
I would
Yes.
just ask one thing. If we do hear from Mr. Gazand, if you could just, if it's appropriate, just let us know that he's okay.
Yes, will do.
Thank you.
Thanks. And Councilmember Hennon, with your liaison report.
Yes, thank you. I have a few things. First, the marijuana permitting process right now is frozen while that undergoes some litigation. So there's no movement there right now. Council passed the first reading of an ordinance to allow air conditioner compressors in the side yard if certain conditions are met. And as we mentioned, generators in the rear yard. But that's not in effect yet. Also a new ordinance clarifying the language for projections, which was up to some interpretation before. Now that's more specific. If these pass a second reading, then it's probably about 7 more weeks before those will go into effect. And then I just wanted to piggyback on some comments that were made earlier regarding the 5 standards. I think for applicants and the general public that might be following along, maybe someone that lives near a location that's coming for a variance, I'd love if we had 1 or 2 pages that listed each of the standards and then maybe describe them in layman's terms so people would know ahead of time what to expect. You know, we use technical terms such as, you know, unique conditions or, you know, not self-created, that may not be clear if they haven't had the training that we've had. And then perhaps including links where they can get even more in-depth information. So I think that would be a really good asset, both for applicants, and for members of the public. So that's all I have tonight. Thanks.
I think that's a great addition. If we could look at that for our application, not that I want to belabor that point, but if we look at some of the answers we get, they don't understand what their answer doesn't make sense. They're not even answering the question because I don't think they understand the circumstances or what they need to do. And it only helps them.
Yeah, I think that would be beneficial. You know, I think some people come in with a certain idea of what they might be able to accomplish, and I hope they don't want to walk out of here too disappointed, but it's not clear that they necessarily have the same practical understanding of the standards as the board. So maybe that's something I think it's very beneficial. I'm just trying to think of a way as a board we can give clear direction in the future. Maybe I'm just making this up. Maybe our city attorney could write up some commentary just to throw in there in regards to the standards. I've seen other city attorneys do it.
I think it's almost an attachment that goes with the application that says, you know, this section, this is the question, and explain it. So, but maybe that's something we talk about next week or the next meeting as well, or, you know, maybe at another meeting, let's look at the application to see if we can further solidify how to help people. Sure.
Okay. That's an excellent suggestion. Thank you, Councilmember Hennon. Appreciate it. At this point, I will open up public comments. And the public does have the opportunity to speak on anything not relating to this agenda. To speak during public comment, participants in the webcast can utilize the raise hand function by selecting Manage Participants on the bottom of your dashboard, and then select the More button in the bottom right-hand corner. Our moderator will call your name aloud and unmute you so that you can speak. For those that have called in, you can be placed in the queue for public comment by selecting *9. Our moderator will announce the last 4 digits of your phone number for recognition and unmute you so that you can speak. Participants will have 3 minutes to speak, as they would if we were meeting in person. Once your 3 minutes are up, you will be muted by our moderators. Additionally, comments can be submitted prior to or at this time to zoning@berkleymish.net, where residents and community members can submit public comments as well. Your email must be able to be read in less than 3 minutes. Given the circumstances with the virtual space, we may not be able to read through all of the email comments, but know that we will have them stored and acknowledged on the public record. To participate in public comment, you can dial by phone at 1-312-626-6799 and enter meeting ID 997-0652-8278. At this time, we'll review public comments. Ms. Schluto, do you have any emails we received for a public comment period?
No, Mr. Chairman.
No. And Mr. Moderator, do we have anyone in the queue who would like to make public comment?
Well, Mr. Chair, no one else has joined the meeting.
Okay. Okay. Well, with that, I will close the public comment and I'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks everybody for attending and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.